With fall and winter comes cooler weather, and of course, with the cooler weather comes flu season. Well, nowadays, there's also concern of a possible resurgence of COVID cases, and COVID shots come with that. And of course, those shots have been updated in response to the current circulating variants that are expected to be around, and the new vaccine is supposed to be available sometime in mid-September. The Biden administration is going to be encouraging all Americans to get that new vaccine, but that's not all. Last week, President Biden drew attention by telling reporters that he plans to ask Congress for funding for a new COVID vaccine.
I signed off this morning on a proposal we have to present to the Congress a request for additional funding for a new vaccine that is necessary, that works. And tentatively, not decided finally yet, tentatively it is recommended that, it would likely be recommended that everybody get it, no matter what they got beforehand.
So at least we're being told this one is going to work. But are we making COVID a bigger deal than it should be? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is academic clinical trialist and epidemiologist, Dr. Andrew Bostom. Dr. Bostom, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Thanks. Nice to be with you, Jody.
Well, thankfully, Americans have been putting COVID-19 behind them. I think over the number of cases and deaths shrank significantly, and we're all grateful for that. But of course, flu season is now coming back, which also means COVID season is coming back. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the latest figures and about the latest variants that we can expect?
Well, I mean, we're seeing a slight uptick in cases, and I hate the definition of cases because it just means that people have tested positive for whatever reason that they're being tested. That doesn't tell us very much, because what happens, unfortunately, Jody, is that the positivity is like a tar baby. It labels you, even if it's insignificant infection, as being, quote unquote, hospitalized with COVID and potentially even dying with COVID. And we have good metrics now, which at least, help us discriminate between with and from. And they just seem to fade into the background. You can search through Department of Health websites and look at some of their data more carefully, and you can find, for example, when I look in Rhode Island, that a third or less of the hospitalizations with COVID are actually because COVID is the primary cause. And even there, they hedge a little bit. They say primary or suspected primary. So you really have to take a lot of these numbers with a grain of salt. But yeah, you're absolutely right, because we're heading into the fall, flu season. We're seeing a slight uptick. There's no stress at all on the system whatsoever. We have this huge pool of people who've been infected multiple times, which confers, the most robust and enduring and flexible immunity. And frankly, I think it's much ado about nothing. And even the introduction of this new vaccine, at least I know what Biden's talking about, but the vaccine that's about to come out in a couple of weeks is targeting the XBB 1.5 variant, which at the time the vaccine was approved might have been predominant, but a couple of weeks ago, it only accounted for less than 5% of the current infections by surveillance. And by the time the vaccine is actually rolled out, it'll probably be down to 0%. So we're constantly, chasing our tail with this kind of, and it's, you can fault if you want to, manufacturers, the government, but it's just the nature of mRNA vaccines. They mutate wildly, which is why the flu shots themselves, influenza is also an mRNA, an RNA virus. It's very ineffective. We have almost a half century of data on the flu vaccine. It's very ineffective, and certainly doesn't confer sterilizing immunity where you get immunized and you won't transmit to other people. And it's not particularly effective at preventing hospitalizations or deaths. We know all this, and yet we keep pushing.
Yeah, we just heard the president say, but this one's going to be effective. This one's going to work. And I don't know. It may be because of election season approaching, or maybe
Perhaps.
they've learned some lessons. I doubt it, but perhaps. But the Biden administration, at least at this point, does not appear to be going down the pathway of mandating the newest COVID jab. At least not so far. But they are going to be recommending it to everyone.
Yeah, I didn't.
So what's your thoughts?
Mandates should be completely verboten, but even a broad recommendation is absurd because it's a very risk. Both influenza and COVID are really risk stratified. They target the frail, particularly the frail elderly. I wish we had more effective prophylaxis for them. Frankly, we don't. But if you're going to apply it at all, it should be to a niche group that's at the highest possible risk, and broad recommendations are really absurd. And with the COVID vaccines, we know it's not common, but they carry a significant toxicity package with them. Particularly, we've seen this signal. Again, it's not common; it's a rare phenomenon, but it's a serious phenomenon of mRNA vaccine-induced myocarditis. And some rarer still cases, myocarditis and sudden cardiac death. All for.
Let me get your quick reaction. Let me get your quick reaction to this. We've got less than 2 minutes here, and I want to get your reaction. The 5 on Fox, their resident liberal Democrat, former Democratic representative Harold Ford, said this. I want to get your reaction.
I won't wear a mask, but I'm going to get the shot.
You are? What number shot is this for you?
I've had it I do one in October. I have one in April.
How many? What's the total?
This will be my 7th.
7 shots.
And I've had COVID 3 times.
Okay, we've got 30 seconds. Real quick response.
The laughter underscores the absurdity of what he just said. And the serious part is that there is one of our immunoglobulins that protect us. One of the classes of immunoglobulins, IgG4, is increased with multiple shots, and that's not a protective antibody. That doesn't neutralize the virus. It actually helps accommodate the virus. And so this
Dr.
is a very
Bostom,
advanced
thank you
strategy.
so much.
Sure thing.